The first MMA fight, the first televised MMA fight, when did it happen? Well, the first MMA fight in the United States that was televised happened in 1963. Um, and it wasn't at the time of the first UFC, which happened 30 years later in 1993, in November of 93. It was actually 30 years prior to that. The story goes that it started with an Australian boxer named Jim Beck. And he was kind of trash talking some of the martial artists that were becoming popular, like karate was becoming popular, judo had been around for a while, and he was basically saying that um, that judo people were complete frauds. He was calling them braggarts and show-offs. And this kind of upset a lot of the martial artists hearing stuff like this. And Beck further went on to say that he would give $1,000 to any martial artist that could beat him in a fight. So the talk was going around the martial arts community, and people asked Gene LeBell, came to be known as Judo Gene LeBell. And they asked him to do the challenge, and he kind of wondered. He asked them, well, why do you want me to do it? He says, I'm not a Kempo guy. I'm not a karate guy so much. He says, why do you want me to do it? He said, and they kind of basically said because he was so sadistic, I guess was the word that Gene LeBell used years later. And they also said that, well, you'll get $1,000 for it, which in modern times, that's about $8,500. So Gene LeBell said that, well, he said he'd fight his grandmother for $1,000, but he said he'd lose to his grandmother. So anyway, the fight was scheduled. It was scheduled to happen in Salt Lake City, and in December of 1963. And at the time, boxing was the number one combat sport. It was very popular. It had been on the radio for years and started becoming televised. And most people thought boxing was the number one fighting art at least in the West and here in the United States. And they expected Beck to win the fight against Gene LeBell. And Beck didn't necessarily have that many fights under his belt. He was only an amateur boxer, and he had 4 wins, 2 losses, and 2 draws. But when Gene LeBell showed up for the fight, they did kind of a bait and switch, and instead of Beck fighting, they switched up and had Milo Savage fight. Now, Milo Savage was a much more experienced boxer, and he had a 49 wins, 46 losses, and 10 draws record. And he was a former top 5 light heavyweight boxer. When LeBell found this out, he still was up to the challenge, and he thought, when I beat him, it's even going to look better. So LeBell wasn't one to back down from challenges. And he had a long history of fighting. He had gotten his judo black belt and in the United States, and he had trained in the Kodokan, which is the judo headquarters in Japan. He had been competing since the early 1950s in judo competitions, so he wasn't afraid of competition and fighting. So the fight was scheduled, and it was supposed to go on for 5 rounds, 5 3-minute rounds. Some of the rules were that the boxer, Milo Savage, he could punch, but he would wear a gi. He would wear a top, a martial arts top, a gi, so that Gene LeBell could grab it. And LeBell also, the rules stated that he couldn't kick, and he couldn't do any takedowns like below the waist. He couldn't do wrestling type takedowns or tackles, things like that. And like I said, he couldn't kick. LaBelle said that Milo Savage kind of cheated a bit in that he wore a gi with really tight sleeves and small sleeves so he couldn't grab it much. And he also said that Savage had used Vaseline, so it was really difficult for him to grab him. But nonetheless, when the fight happened, LaBelle dominated pretty much the whole fight. And in the fourth round, he ended up mounted on top of Savage and choked him unconscious with a rear naked choke. And I guess in a show of good sportsmanship, when the ring doctor couldn't bring Savage back to consciousness, LaBelle's team went over there and helped and brought him back to consciousness. So that was the fight. That was the first big, or the first televised MMA fight in existence that happened in the United States. Gene LaBelle went on to do a lot of stunt work in movies, and there's a lot of movies you can see him in, and in the background doing stunts and things like that. I've seen him a lot through the years. I've seen him in some things, even with Bruce Lee, where he did stunts with him in certain scenes way back in the 60s. There's lots of, LaBelle is kind of a jokester. He's got a lot of funny lines that he said through the years, but he's also a really tough guy. There's a story out there, a lot of people say it's true, that he choked out Steven Seagal and, made him poop his pants while he choked him out unconscious, or because he choked him out unconscious. So LaBelle's got quite the history, lots of stuff. He also was known for wearing his pink gi. The story is that he wore his white gi once and wore it with something red or something, it became pink, and then he just thought it was something to do from then on out, so he was known for wearing his pink gi. But nonetheless, after that fight, it kind of just drifted off of people's consciousness, and Cassius Clay was slated to fight Sonny Liston soon after that, and Cassius Clay, obviously became Muhammad Ali, and the popularity of boxing continued to grow, and for the next 30 years, and until the popularity of the UFC began, and MMA kind of became a popular sport in its own right. But anyway, that's the story. Hope you found that interesting, and like, share, and subscribe. We'll keep things coming out to you, and I'd appreciate the support. Thanks.